Hello friends, I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? I hope everything is fantastic. Everything here is wonderful, and I read a book. I was going to do the other video today. We will do it tomorrow, I hope. I promise. I hope. I promise. Instead, we're going to talk about a book that I've recently read, and that is The Alloy of Law, a Mistborn novel by Brandon Sanderson. If you go back in the channel like September, October time frame, I was talking about wanting to read, and I hadn't been reading much. I hadn't read really anything in like 6 or 8 months, basically since this whole disaster started. And one of the first things I picked up was the Mistborn trilogy from Brandon Sanderson, and I read through it in all 3 books in like 7 days. And I was blown away. And that sent me on this spiral of nonstop reading for like 3 months. I read about 30 books in 3 months. Maybe a little bit more than that. So I was really excited to find out that there was more books in the Mistborn series, and this is the first of those. Now, this book is about a new set of characters in a new time frame in the Mistborn world. And it was intended to be a short story, and Brandon wrote the short story and then decided to keep going, and it turned into a book. And so this is kind of a completely standalone book. There are more books with the main characters in this. This is Wax and Wayne are our main characters, and they have a series now. There are 2 more books, and those 2 books are part of a trilogy. There's a 3rd one coming. I think Brandon actually said recently on a live stream he's working on it right now. But this one, The Alloy of Law, is kind of a standalone. It was intended to be like a project that he worked on between bigger projects. He wanted to write something, so he wrote this book. And so I've been kind of holding on to it for a while. Like, I read Mistborn, and I was really excited about it, and I really wanted to read these. I also really wanted to read The Way of Kings, which is Brandon Sanderson's other huge, like, epic story. But I decided to not read him for a while because I wanted to work on my book. So I started reading other things. I really tried to read like a broad selection of authors to try to give myself a more broader voice in my own writing, because I'm very much the kind of person that I would read this book and then I would go try to write a book, and it would end up sounding and reading very similar to this book. Like I would copy Sanderson's writing style, and it just kind of happens. It's not intentional. It's just the way that, you know, I don't know, I pick up that kind of thing, and then it influences me a little too much. So I read a whole bunch of other things. So I haven't read any more Brandon Sanderson since reading Mistborn because I was waiting until the right time. And now is the right time because I'm ready to start rewriting my book. In fact, I say I'm ready to rewrite it. I think I'm just going to start from scratch. I don't even think I'm going to reference the first draft. I think I'm just going to write a completely fresh new story that has similar beats and similar the location, and most of the characters are the same, but it's a completely different thing. This book turned out to be absolutely perfect. After I finished my first draft in November or beginning of December, I said I was going to go read Westerns, because Westerns, like old pulpy Westerns, are the stories that I needed to help me find kind of that gunslinger action sort of tropey type story that I really wanted to. I wanted to inject a lot of that into my book. This is that, right? This is a world that is kind of a parallel of Earth. It's not Earth. It has nothing to do with Earth. It's in a completely separate galaxy, part of some other universe. But Brandon has said that he wants this world to feel very Earth-like. They have very Earth-like animals. There's humans. Like, there's 24-hour days and 7 days a week and 12 months, and it's very Earth parallel, but it's not Earth. It has nothing to do with Earth, right? And so in the first series, the Mistborn series, the world was kind of in a Dark Ages sort of time frame, right? There was like a type of feudalism, theocratic like leadership, and like an emperor that was very heavy-handed, and the whole point of that story was breaking out of all of that and becoming becoming a more neutral and accepting world. The ska, or the serfs or the peasants, rose up and kind of, helped take control of the world. And this is like 300 and some years later. So this is the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. They've just found out electricity. They have trains. They have guns are a new thing. And it's very, very, very much... It's going to help me a lot when I write. The pacing of this story is fantastic. It starts off quick. It ends quick. It just boom, boom, boom. Every little plot point hits. The reason that I think that I really wanted to read Sanderson is because he gets a lot of flack from purists who say that his writing is really, like, it's almost too simple. It's almost too... there's no fluff to it. There's no praise. There's no. You couldn't really thumb through his books and find sentences that inspire awe. They're just kind of very plain and very boring. And I love it. That's the exact kind of story that I want to write, because it's a very engaging kind of story. Anybody can pick it up and read it and enjoy it. But the thing that I see when I read Brandon's work is the things that are supposed to happen in a book are very obvious, and they happen like exactly how they're supposed to. He writes to a very specific formula. And so all of the tropes that hit when the tropes are supposed to hit, they hit. All of the plot points when the bad guy's supposed to be revealed, or when the damsel gets taken, it all hits. This book hits every single one of those points. You know exactly when it's coming. The setup is... he's not trying to hide things behind layers. It's just, this is that story. It's a story of a lawman whose girlfriend ends up being kidnapped, and now he has to come out of retirement to save the day. And, the bad guy turns out to be exactly what you expect. It all hits. And I think that's the reason that I was saving this for now. Because this is a pulp gunslinger Western story, but with fantasy elements, with magic, and with weird religions and strange culture. But it is a fantasy Western. It is a Western style pulp story. It's super quick and super fun, super exciting, and it hits every single plot point. Apart from having somebody tied down to train tracks, this thing is every Western movie you ever loved in a book. It's awesome. It's a really fun read. And it's not complex, and it's not going to awe you with lofty writing. It's not going to inspire you with morality and pomp and circumstance. It's kind of cut and dry. It's kind of just a simple detective story with gunfights and women who are capable. They're not just your typical blushing damsels, right? They are capable. So it's exactly what I needed to read for this moment in time. Very, very fun book. I'm really excited to start working on the new version of my story. I think it's becoming an actual story as opposed to just a series of events that happen to a man. The story in here, the character arc in here, it's pretty subtle. The main character's arc is pretty subtle. And I think that's the key that I needed to find. When you watch writing advice, especially on YouTube, the arcs that people talk about are these huge, like, this person is, downtrodden and completely worthless, and at the end they end up being a god. Or these huge story arcs, these huge character changes. It's not what I want to write. I want to write the pulp story of the guy who just has maybe a little tiny change, maybe a little tiny, like, at first he doesn't trust machinery, and by the end he's okay with it, but not accepting of it. That's the kind of, those are the kind of character arcs that you find in old pulp. They're basically non-existent. Every story has to, kind of has to have that sort of arc to propel the story, but in pulpy style stories and in serialized stories where you're telling you're taking a character and you're walking that character through their life and showing us, the reader, all of these various adventures they've been on. Each adventure doesn't have some world-changing arc. It's just each adventure has something that makes the character go, maybe I shouldn't have done that. That's the little tiny arc that I've been trying to find, and I haven't quite figured it out yet, but I'm hoping to get there, and I think this helped a lot. So if you enjoy kind of fast-paced action pulpy stories, I think this is a great book. And you don't have to know anything about any of his other works to pick this up and read it. It all makes sense, and it works very, very well. So Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson. What a fun read. I had a blast. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you, and I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know to sound smart is esoteric. It's an adjective meaning something known or appreciated by an elite few who have the taste, sophistication, and education to understand its merits. My esoteric doctrine is that if you entertain any doubt, it is safest to take the unpopular side in the first instance. William Lamb Melbourne, a British Prime Minister. Esoteric. E-S-O-T-E-R-I-C. What's a good workshop esoteric? Festool? Like, are those esoteric tools?